This video has been sponsored by Squarespace, an all-in-one website platform for anyone trying to succeed online. The Hat Man. Who is he, and why are we trying to meet him? The Hat Man usually is seen when people take a lot of Benadryl. And there's even a subreddit where people like to take large amounts and they see the Hat Man. And even on the subreddit, they have stories called trip reports, with one user saying they ate almost a gram. And that's not even the highest dose that I saw, with many other trip reports saying that they saw the Hat Man. Even one Redditor said that they fucked him. In the first step of the series, we got DMAE. Now the next step is to make diphenylmethanol, and then we just have one more step. After this video, I'll have everything that I need to make Benadryl so I can finally see him. But why? Isn't Benadryl in high doses a delirium and causes psychosis? Yes, it does. But maybe the Hat Man will respect me and show me himself since I made it. So, let's get into step 2.
Disclaimer, this video is for educational and informational purposes only. We do not encourage or endorse the production or use of Benadryl, diphenhydramine, outside of a professional medical context. This process shown is intended to demonstrate the chemical principles behind pharmaceutical compounds and should not be attempted by individuals without inappropriate expertise and safety measures in place. Benadryl has significant side effects, especially when taken in doses higher than recommended. Misuse can lead to serious health risks, including but not limited to drowsiness, dizziness, blurred vision, dry mouth, difficulty urinating, constipation, confusion, and in severe cases, heart issues, seizures, and death. Always use medications as directed by a healthcare professional. If you or someone you know is experiencing adverse effects from medication misuse, seek medical attention immediately. Viewer discretion is advised.
To get started, we need a 500 milliliter beaker. I then got a mortar and pestle, and I put it onto a scale. 44.8 grams of benzophenone was weighed into the mortar and pestle. The benzophenone that I got was in these chunks, and I need to grind them down to a powder. Benzophenone is widely used in the perfume industry, and it has a sweet floral smell. As I was grinding it down, the aroma increased, and slowly encapsulated my olfactory senses. I then added this to the beaker, and everything looks pretty powdery, and I was pretty happy with the result. To this, I added 280 milliliters of anhydrous methanol. I dropped a stir bar in, and I turned on the stirring. It will take some time for everything to dissolve, and we're also going to have to slightly heat it to get everything dissolved. With strong stirring, it kind of looked like a blizzard in there, and I thought it was pretty cool. I turned up the stirring, and it looked like your family home was being destroyed from a twister in Kansas. After about 10 minutes with some light heating, it finally all dissolved, and I was ready to move on to the next step. I should probably also mention what we're actually doing in this reaction. An extremely easy way to get diphenylmethanol is to just reduce benzophenone. This is done with sodium borohydride, which can reduce ketones and aldehydes. A reduction in organic chemistry simply means that you're just adding hydrogen. Alright, let's get back to it. I then added 4.48 grams of sodium borohydride. Upon the addition, you can immediately see an evolution of hydrogen gas. Now, this isn't due to the reduction of the carbonyl, but due to sodium borohydride reacting with the methanol, or any water that wasn't fully removed from the methanol. Though I've seen procedures where they dissolved all of the sodium borohydride in water first, so I'm not really worried. Also, in the procedure that I was following, they added everything in one portion, but I didn't do that just because I didn't know how it would react, and I did it bit by bit. Actually, that's a lie. I did a couple scoops and then I threw the rest in. The reaction was allowed to stand at room temperature for about 20 minutes, with some occasional stirring. The procedure said it only bubbled when they stirred it, but mine was bubbling pretty profusely even without it, and also had quite an exothermic reaction. Now, I did increase the reagent amounts by a factor of 35, so that could be potentially why it's bubbling so much. Or my methanol is not as dry as I thought it was. Or I'm just straight up stupid and don't know chemistry. As time went on, the bubbles slowly started to get less and less, and eventually there was no more. After about 20 to 25 minutes, I added 175 milliliters of water. Upon the addition of the water, you can see a precipitate come out of solution. This is likely our diphenylmethanol, as an increase in water will decrease the solubility. This will also decompose any excess sodium borohydride. And the bubbles coming out of solution is likely the hydrogen gas from that. Now we need to boil the solution on a steam bath for about 5 minutes. Though I just slightly warmed it on the hot plate as it worked out pretty well. It's also important that I don't boil off a huge amount of the methanol, so we don't want a vigorous boil. As the solution heated up, we can see that white precipitate slowly turn into these oil-like globules. And as the solution got warmer and warmer, it eventually was this clear liquid that started to coalesce on the bottom. After being done with its quote-unquote steam bath, everything coalesced on the bottom. Now, we have to let this cool down to room temperature. As it was cooling down, we can see these really interesting patterns of something precipitating out of solution. As time went on and the solution cooled more, it got even more opaque.
We interrupt this program for an important news announcement.
I just want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, and that's Squarespace.com. Alright, let's get down to it. Squarespace is one of the best website building platforms ever. With things like Fluid Engine, you have unbreakable creativity, and it's just a drag and drop technology. You can have your website any way you want. It's perfect if you're a wedding planner, as you can do everything online and look really professional. Do you love photography? Well, perfect. You can categorize, share, and schedule your posts to make your content work for you. I've been using it to make my own website, and I've been loving it ever since. I really like the flexibility, as it's pretty hard to make a chemistry website, and Squarespace made that a lot easier. Plus, with Squarespace extensions, you have everything at your fingertips. I can have scheduling for appointment-based services, I can share all of my socials with one link, have templates that create beautiful social content, and create reservations for any business. If you want all of this and more, head over to squarespace.com/ChemDelic to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain using code ChemDelic. Once it cooled, it all crystallized out. We now need to put this into an ice bath to make sure that everything crystallized out. After chilling for about 10 to 20 minutes, I took it out of the ice bath and I was ready to move on to the next step. Before the next step, I made sure to break up all the chunks inside the beaker. I then performed a vacuum filtration and made sure to filter all of the crystals out of the solution. I also washed the original beaker out and washed a couple times with some water. I also made sure to let the vacuum run for a little bit of time, just to make sure that all the liquid was out of the crystals. Moving them around and breaking up any clumps also aided in this process. Here's a cool video of me doing the washing steps. And this is strictly for educational purposes and not me trying to get my runtime to go up. Though, after doing the water washings, it also precipitated a lot more crystals out. So I emptied the filter and I filtered these as well. I also washed them with water and let the vacuum run to dry them out. Though these crystals weren't as pretty looking and they kind of just looked like lumps. I then put all of the crystals into a vacuum desiccator and let them dry out for a couple days. So little issue, we have a theoretical yield of 45.35 grams and we have a yield of 51.37 grams, which equates to a percent yield of 113.27. I thought my drying technique wasn't optimal, so I dried it again for another 24 hours, and it really only went down to like 48 grams, so it was still above the theoretical yield. Now, not only did this make me angry, but it also went under the assumption that all 4 hydrides from sodium borohydride would be used. Now, generally, you would do a 1:1 mole ratio when you do a reduction, though theoretically, you could have 4 hydrides used in reduction. This starts out normally where a hydride will attack the carbonyl. This generates borane, and the alkoxide formed in the reduction can then attack it. This then regenerates the borohydride, and then it can go through the process again. It basically goes through the same thing until all of the hydrides are used. I don't know the exact mechanism, especially when it's in methanol, but you kind of get the point. Though, theory can only take you so far. In the procedure, they used 1 mole of benzophenone to about half a mole of sodium borohydride. Though, if you multiply that half a mole by 4, that would theoretically make benzophenone the limiting reagent. The reason it's multiplied by 4 is that there's an assumption of 4 hydrides being used. Since it was only theory, my gut feeling said to add more sodium borohydride, and I actually reduced it one more time. This time, I just matched a 1:1 mole ratio without multiplying by 4 at all. I also followed every single step that I did previously. After vacuum filtration and a couple water washes, this is what we have. It doesn't have that beautiful crystal look like the first one, but it still is a white powder. And this time, I used a space heater to dry everything rather than a desiccator, and it actually worked a lot better, and it took about 4 hours. This time, our yield came out to 41.58 grams with a percent yield of 91.67%. It's also quite possible that my desiccator just wasn't that good and the space heater dried it a lot better. Or I just lost a lot of product when I transferred everything and redid it, but I'm not really sure. Though mentally I feel a lot better, using the correct molar amount of sodium borohydride just in case. I also did a melting point test, and it started to melt at 69 degrees Celsius. According to Wikipedia, this is also the melting point. Now, this isn't the most accurate method, but it gives us a pretty good estimation of what it is. Now, there's also a lot of different melting points that I've seen for diphenylmethanol, like 65 through 67 degrees Celsius, 69 degrees Celsius, 64 through 68 degrees Celsius, so I'm pretty much in the ballpark, and I'm gonna call it good. I'm just happy it didn't melt at around 48.5 degrees Celsius, because that would mean we just have benzophenone. I'm also going to run a TLC on this. I'm just waiting on my TLC light, and it should arrive here in a couple days. I'll also likely do a recrystallization with some petroleum ether before I move on to step 3 for Benadryl.